computer. There we go. And we are being recorded. All right, amazing hackers. What I would like to begin with, my name is Wesley. I am 30 years of age, been ethical hacking for about 3 years. In my time, I've done bug bounties for a few months. I'd found 30 valid vulnerabilities in about 2 months' time. I've done some ethical hacking, done some pen testing. I've done a little bit of everything. And basically, I'm a father. I'm a father of a kid that is about 3 years old, so it's not easy. All of this is being done after hours, as you can see also on my computer screen. It's 11 p.m. So this meeting is going to be from 11 till 1 p.m. We're going to overview some issue types that are very common. And I want you to, first of all, we're going to see them theoretically, but I've also prepared some labs. So everybody at home can hack along. I've selected labs that do not require tools. So let's get started, shall we? Because we don't have that much time. Now, the first one is very easy, CAPTCHA bypass. Not all programs and bug bounties accept this, of course, but what you should know about the CAPTCHA bypass is that you can implement CAPTCHA as much as you want, but if we go and look at the actual code, so the code is here to generate the actual CAPTCHA image, but it's never checking if the CAPTCHA is correct, which is not good, of course. As you can see here, we're selecting or grabbing that image, we're generating it, but nowhere are we checking that, and that leads to, even if we don't fill in this CAPTCHA, nobody's going to complain. It's just going to allow us to fill in our values and display them even without a CAPTCHA value. So CAPTCHA bypass is something that might not look serious at first glance, but it can lead to some more severe bugs, of course, because CAPTCHA can be implemented as a form of rate limiting. And if you can then bypass rate limit by starting up a whole bunch of instances that are not allowed to be started up, for example, in cloud computing, that can be quite a problem. So that's CAPTCHA bypass. I really wanted to go over that quick. I didn't want to spend too much time on it because it can be quite easy. You just check if the CAPTCHA is accepted. And of course, you can fill in any value right here, but you look at the post request, and sometimes this field itself, the form itself, might have some security on it, saying you haven't filled in any CAPTCHA, or the form might request that you fill in the correct CAPTCHA. But I'm looking at client-side security here, and I want to bypass that by looking at the requests directly. By the way, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat as well, or just interrupt me, say, hey, uncle, that's not right, or something like that. So on to CSRF. Excuse me. CSRF can be quite a serious issue, cross-site request forgery. And on its own, it's often not accepted on bug bounty programs, or at least you have to check very carefully. And some people think that every CSRF is a bug, every CSRF issue is a bug, but that's not necessarily the case. And we're gonna go over that as well. First, a quick overview of what CSRF is again. Say, for example, that I own a bank. That bank has a net banking solution, and I have a post call to slash transfer. It creates money transfer from A to B. And the attacker, they copy that form on their own website, and they fill in their own account number in a hidden field somewhere. And they make it seem like the victim is actually writing over money to the account that they want to, but in reality, it's going to the attacker's account. And of course, I know that's very, very simplistic. There are many, many security measures in place to prevent this, but let's take the most simplistic case, because there are still developing banks in the world that have this issue because they don't know about this problem. Of course, they're more and more rare, but this is only one example. I'll give you more later on. A CSRF token can be used to prevent that issue. Now, that CSRF token, as you can see, is usually session bound. I generate like this. I don't know if this is the intention, bin to hex random bytes 32. So I just basically generate 32 random bytes, and then I convert that binary to hex, and that's my session token. And then, of course, I if it's empty, I generate that, and then I put it in the token variable. Now later on, I echo that token variable into every single field that I see, and my attacker, he cannot view this token variable. So, well, at least he can view it, but he can't mimic it because it's session bound. And of course, the attacker can't read session variables from the victim, or at least they should not be able to. Now, that CSRF token then also needs to be verified again. The same issue might occur. So what can go wrong in this instance is that no CSRF is implemented where it's needed. And with that, I mean, like, for example, I have an email address that I can change. I can change my email address. So what I really need to know about CSRF is that it only happens, or it should only happen, on forms after logging in, or something that is session bound or something like that. And what can go wrong is that you didn't implement CSRF check where it's required, like that email that doesn't have a CSRF check. Well, in that case, that's an issue, of course. Not checking the CSRF token, so making sure that it's there, but not checking the value, that can also be an issue. Or the server can only check if the CSRF token is present or the length of the CSRF token is correct. It may seem funny, but I've seen this happen before, and it's not on purpose, of course. All of these issues happen because of a chain of mistakes, but still they do happen. For example, only checking the same constraint, like it's a hexadecimal value, that might be a constraint that might have to start with a certain value, not binding the CSRF tokens to the session. So making it so that I, as an attacker, can insert my own CSRF token while creating a request to the victim. That's also a possibility. The impact can be very, very severe of this issue type, even though it might not seem like it. It can lead to severe account takeovers, like the example of the email address change that I gave you guys. Well, if you change an email address, request a password reset, you can take over an account. An example also occur on deletion of accounts, can anything that requires the creation, deletion of updating or of a property or an object. So that means that, for example, I've been able to create items in a person's account via CSRF, but that item wasn't that important. It was annoying at most. But then I was able to chain it, and that's where the next thing comes in, chaining CSRF. I was able to chain it with self-cross-site scripting. That item that I was able to insert when chained with self-cross-site scripting would allow me to, well, basically, it wasn't self-cross-site scripting anymore, because as an attacker, I could create a form on my website, which would make a post request, which would actually work because the CSRF token wasn't checked with a cross-site scripting attack factor. So CSRF into cross-site scripting. You can also do the same thing. You can try to steal the CSRF token with cross-site scripting. You can even chain SSRF into CSRF. Now, these are all examples, and this is all theoretical. But what I want you to do right now is I want you to go to your browser and go to hexpert.com/csref. And there, if you do it right, of course, hexpert.com/csref, there you will see a number of challenges. Now, I'm going to give you guys 15 minutes to solve 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. They all have different vulnerabilities in them. And I want you to try to identify what the vulnerability is and not just try to see, okay, there's a vulnerability, I can bypass it. Like 10, for example, is going to be very, very easy, but it's going to be a bit harder as you move on. And if you inspect the element right here, you can see that the CSRF token is present. And you can start doing all kinds of things with that CSRF token. So again, I'm going to give you guys 15 minutes. Let's set the timer, 15 minutes. There we go, and start. So do your worst on those labs, on the CSRF labs, and when you're when we get back to it, we'll solve them as well. And the solutions are there. You can cheat, of course, but it's in your own interest not to cheat. That's Yes, this will be recorded, definitely. If you guys have any questions, you can also ask them to me directly in the DM, by the way, and nobody else can see them. And if you have the solutions to these labs, you can send them in a DM to me as well. I really appreciate some interactivity. If you have any questions, also just throw them in the chat. I'm there for you. But now I'm gonna shut my blabbering mouth so you guys can work. I just got a question. Will we discuss all types of vulnerabilities here? Unfortunately, we don't have time for that. At least not today. We're going to split them up into several classes. Today, we're going to go over sysref, XXC, broken access control, IDOR, and cross-site scripting. So I hope you guys are ready. And these are boring labs, of course, but they're going to get a lot more exciting as we move on. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Hello, Mr. Argus. How are you doing, my friend? Good to have you here. We're right now, I should post this in the chat as well, of course. Terribly sorry about that, guys. Please don't mess up the recordings or anything like that and start annotating the screen. I really don't appreciate it, and you're gonna get removed from the meeting. I'm trying to help here, and it bothers me when people try to mess up things like that. So if you see some strange annotations in the recording or on screen, sorry about that. All right, so we have about 2.5 minutes left. I hope it's coming along okay with everybody. The first few should have been solved by now. So, of course, the 10.php, I believe it is, yes, 10.php is going to be very easy because there should be a CSRF token, but there just is none. And in this case, of course, it's very easy. Now, the other ones, take your time. We're gonna go over them as well as soon as you guys have solved them, of course. We have 2 minutes left on the clock, so take your time. Next up after this is gonna be XXC, which is gonna be another Baron lab. But then we're gonna go over to broken access control, and that's gonna look a lot more like a pen test than what we are doing right now. I'll put this up on screen as well. All right, so we have a few seconds left, my friends. I say we start going over what's the exercises brought us, shall we? Of course, 10.php was easy, but let's move on to 20.php. Now on 20.php, let me whip up, there we go. So in here, this is one is harder to get, but this one, let's just fill in a value here. I believe CSRF token not validated. That's because here the CSRF token is actually the user identifier, and that's a harder one to get, of course. Then we have 30. Oh no, sorry, that was 30.php. So 20.php should only check if the length is correct. 30.php is the actual user identifier, which should never happen, of course, because again, we said this was session bound, and if you can guess that session's user identifier, you also have their CSRF token. Then we have 40. Yeah, you see me peeking at my screen over there. 40 is only checks if the CSRF token is not empty. So we should be able to, for 40, it appears that I've messed up my labs a little bit. Again, the user identifier, so that one was easy. And for 50, 50 is also, it seems like I've messed up my CSRF labs a little bit. That's not good. So yeah, my labs have been messed up a little bit. That's not great. So sorry about that. That's gonna be, of course, easy to solve. All of them are the user identifier. Um, I say we move on to the next part and hope that the labs are better. I know that the labs are better for this one because I've tested them personally. We're gonna move over to XXE right now. Oh, that's the wrong button. I should be going there. There we go. So X60 external entities, XML external entities. What is it? Well, XML external entities, you know, XML is getting replaced. I know that as well. JSON is taking its place. It's just getting replaced with better formats these days. And I know that it's still prevalent in some programs. They still use XML a lot, and it doesn't just have to be an XML file. It can be an SVG, because SVG is just an image in XML format. It can also be a docx, for example, because docx is just a document with XMLs describing how they are brought up and all of that stuff. So XXE is still sometimes prevalent, even in SOAP requests. It can occur. It always occurs when XML documents are parsed, and those XML documents, when parsing, standard libraries sometimes allow for external entities. We don't do it these days anymore. They used to do it a lot, but not every developer knows what these are, and they don't know if their library does allow for it or not. It's basically an external entity, so it's outside of your DTD. And there are many different types of attacks. You can try to retrieve files. You can do remote code execution. You can try to perform an SSRef. You can try to get blind XXE. There are just many types of XXE, and just a few. The retrieving files, for example, is what you can see here. And that's how we're going to try and retrieve the etc password file. And it's gonna be in, we're gonna create this entity, we're gonna call upon it, and then we're going to call this entity in one of the document nodes. And it's really important to test all of the nodes of the XML document, because XML external entities can be allowed for certain nodes while they're not allowed for others. It's a possibility. It's also, we can try SSRF, for example. It doesn't have to be a system call to a file. It can just be a system call as well. And the majority of XXD attacks will be blind, and you'll be detecting them through SSRF, and you'll be inserting your own well, out of band server, basically. Data exfiltration is still possible with blind XXCs, but you'll have to know a lot more about the target. So I'm not going to go into that today. And as for a text strategy, basically I try to create a test.xml. I have an svg.xml and a docx that I always have ready. SVG file and a docx file that I always have ready. And whenever I see an image upload being processed, like a profile picture, for example, I'll take that SVG and I'll try to upload it as an image, because then I'll be testing for XXE. And my strategy is to mainly test blind XXE. So I'll try to insert my Burp collaborator URL in there, and I'll look for HTTP and DNS requests. So that increases my attack surface quite a bit with those SVGs, with the docx, with those SOAP requests. Those all help. Now I have a lab on XXE as well that I recently brought out. So chances are that you've already solved it, but I'm going to give people here still a couple of minutes to solve this lab. It's just, I'll post it in the chat as well. There we go. Yeah, that's a good way to get yourself blocked.
Shut up, you fat thing! Wash your hair! Wash!
There we go. That's an easy way to get yourself removed from the meeting. Sorry about that intermezzo. Yeah, I should basically not allow yourselves to unmute yourselves. The reason I allow yourselves to unmute yourself is if you have any questions, but it's like people always take advantage of it. Anyway, try to hack this lab if you want. And making a post request, you can basically try to do that in a couple of ways. I would advise you to install a tool called Postman. Now, I said this was toolless. It is still toollessly possible. You can still do this in Firefox as well, so you don't have to use the tool that I've installed, Postman, but I'll give you, it's on screen basically what you have to type as well with what data, but I'll also show you the attack vectors as well. And of course you can Google those attack vectors, and I'll show you them on screen right now. Where is it? Or so basically, it's not going to be entirely the same. You will have to make some changes, but it's going to be very similar to what you see here to retrieving. Let's see if we can get this on screen all right. Let's put up a timer again, and let's make this one about 10 minutes. Set a second timer for reset. 10 minutes. And let's try and grab those files. Now I'll put a file exfiltration. There we go. And I'll also put something on the screen for XXE file. And then we'll show you a solution. So this is a good lab by Portswigger that I would definitely recommend everybody give a shot. It's very similar to mine and their solution. Let's put this on screen. Solution. Gonna be very similar to what you have to do here. The only thing is that you won't have to insert your Burp collaborator subdomain, etc., of course, but you will have to insert your file exfiltration. So remember, there we go. Remember, these guys are doing like this, and they're doing file exfiltration. We don't have to do file exfiltration. We can do it a lot easier by just declaring our entity and giving it a name instead of just blank. So %file should be %EE, and then, or XXE or whatever, and then calling upon that. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them on the chat. Let's see. Ah, this lab, yeah. With a canary token, that's a good one. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Anyway, I'm gonna stop blabbering for a few moments, give you guys some time to solve it, and then we'll solve this one in front of everybody as well, of course. All right, my friend. So the time is up. Now I'm going to show you in Postman partly, and I have an X60 demo for that, of course. This is a collection in it. I have a request going, and I should send a GET request, but it said make it a post request, so I did that. And of course, then I've defined my entity to create a file from the system. And then I'm trying to grab that entity, of course, and displaying that entity does nothing for me apparently, because of course I have my URL set incorrectly. If I set it properly, third time's the charm, they say. There we go. I get my file. Now, of course, let's see. I don't think I need this. Oh, I do need the document type. Otherwise, it's going to be annoying to me, but I don't think, no, I don't need that first rule. So I do need to declare the doc type foo element foo any, and then I need to declare my entity, and then I can say cheese. Okay, so this one should have been a pretty easy one. Now, sometimes XXE, it might require some finicking because, like, say, for example, these files are blocked. I can try to grab some other files. There might be a filter in place. I can try to bypass that filter. So XXE definitely is a vulnerability. It's still there, even though people might think it's not. It's just being overlooked a bit more these days because people think XXE, well, not a lot of people think external entities anymore. And most libraries by default disable this external entity grabbing. So it might not be very interesting. Now, oh, my video is not on, I see. There we go, much better. Let's move on to broken access control. This is the part where it gets a little bit more interesting in my opinion. Broken access control, quickly gonna go over it because broken access control can happen either in horizontal or in vertical mode. So vertical privilege escalation, broken access control means that I can do a function of a higher privilege level that I can execute that. Like if I'm a normal user and I can do admin functionality, for example. Horizontal privilege escalation or broken access control in the horizontal way, or sometimes IDOR, I say IDOR here, but IDORs, I mean, IDORs can occur here. It's not always an IDOR, the horizontal privilege escalation. Basically, it's like, oh, I can execute a function on my same level, and it's going to often include an identifier. That's why it's an IDOR, horizontal privilege escalation, an address ID, wish list ID, invoice ID. Those are things that I might not be able to see from my second user, or I might be able to see from a second user, but I shouldn't be able to see them. This can occur in many different ways because often these days multi-tenancy is one of the things that occurs often. It's like where one server is being shared by many different people, and that multi-tenancy can have the effect of actually creating IDORs between different companies or between different users of a specific server. And of course, those IDORs can be quite nasty because if you have two companies renting the same server and those companies have an intertwined IDOR, well, then you can have company information leaking from one company to the other. I wouldn't want that as a company, but of course, maybe you would. That's not for me to judge. I just think it's a vulnerability. And you have, like I said, vertical or horizontal privilege escalation. I've given you a few examples already, and as an attack strategy, it's very, very important. Number one, make sure that you have the right target. You need to have a target that gives you users with a different privilege level, or that lets you make users with a different privilege level. And you need multiple accounts for IDOR, because of course, like we're gonna talk about this next, and you can't have static websites. In my opinion, it's very important to create a mind map, can be an Excel, can be an Xmind of your target with all of its functionalities, all of the privilege levels, and executing, indicating what a user can and cannot do. can be as simple as just a table in Excel with like a red square if it's allowed, or like an X if it's disallowed, something like that. Something very simple that you can get an overview of your entire application. Something like I did here, for example, an employee cannot create a timesheet but can complete and print it. Manager can then sign it, etc. So for broken access control, we really need to have an overview of what the different privilege levels can do. Sometimes this is provided by us even. I've seen some bug bounty targets that give a very great overview of what user is allowed to do what. Use that to your advantage, because if they give you that, that means it's important to them. Sometimes this is hidden as well. I'm talking about first order, second order broken access control. There might be second functionalities working in the background, and I might be able to talk to them and they might be able to execute functions that I'm not able to execute. So for example, let's say I have a invoice module and I cannot view invoices of other users, but I can print invoices. And if I change the identifier to the identifier of the invoice of another user, I might be able to print it. That's of course a broken access control either in that case. We can do this manually or semi-automated. So manually, we should look at all of the JavaScript functions, copy and paste URLs from one browser to another, mark my words, copy URLs, log in as another user, paste them there. So you can either log in a private window, log in a different browser, and then you can log in as an admin, as a low-proof user, and copy the URLs from the admin to the low-proof user and just work that way. That's a possibility. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can also check the JavaScript functions and execute them via developer console, for example, if they take identifiers, of course. We can also execute, if you have Burp Suite open, you can repeat it, the request and change the authorization headers, for example. So there's many different ways that you can test this manually for, and you can also test it semi-automated. Now I say semi-automated because you're automatically going to be replacing those authorization headers. For the low admin user, you're going to be clicking around. Sorry, for the so you're going to be clicking around as an admin user, and you're going to be pasting your low priv users authorization headers in the request automatically. Sometimes it might replace it completely. Sometimes you might repeat the request in a second request. That's what Authorize does, for example. It's a free burp extension, and I'd highly advise you to take a look at it after this course. You can really easily just replace the authorization headers like you see here. Just replace them within the authorization headers of a low priv user and click around as the admin. And then if you see green where you see red, or you see red where you should see green, then it's bypassed, of course. Match and replace can also be used. Auto repeater can be used. I should test match and replace again. It has been broken for me for a while, but it might work again now. I'm not sure. Auto repeater hasn't worked for me for a while, but it might for other people. I have heard it work. And I'm again gonna put you guys to work. This is kind of a first timer. Your guys are gonna be going to you're gonna be going to expert.com/pentest. And this is something that I normally only give in the pen test exam, but in here I'm going to give you guys a few users. And so let's go there. If we navigate there, you have an admin user, so you can log in. You can see here you have an admin user. Admin user, the password is test. We also have some other users, and all of the other users' passwords are test. So it's really simple. Just test. That's it. And I would invite you to go over this page real quickly. Let me reset my Zoom. There we go. Window, so view users. As you can see, there are more here. You have your editor. everybody that is normal, like admin, moderator, and editor, and they all have different privilege levels, and all of them have the password test. By the way, that's admin/test, not admin with a capital. You can create users as well in here. So you can create a new user, go ahead, have fun with it, create as much users as you want. As you can see, I can give them a username, enter email, enter password, and then give them user rights. And I want you to test this for broken access control now. And I'm going to give you again 15 minutes to explore the application. Let's test it for broken access control and see what we can find. Again, this is something that I normally only show on the pen testing examination, I shall call it. But I want you guys to test it for me now. And I want you guys to create some users, have some fun with it, and play with the rights a little bit. See if you can find some broken access control. I'm going to give you guys, again, 15 minutes. So let's reset our timer to 15 minutes and start it. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'll happily answer them for you. And I'm sorry that there's just so much interactivity, but I prefer having some interactivity in my courses than having them just very static, you know? So I prefer you guys doing some exercises as well. Otherwise, the knowledge isn't retained. I can speak here for at least 2-3 hours about all of the different issue types. But while I do that, it's no use. It's not going to be retained. At least this way, I know that you guys are testing for it the way I would test for it, and that I know that it's the knowledge is being used. So again, you guys that are still here, you're the real ones. Some of you, it's very late, I believe. Some of you, it's like 3-4 a.m. So that's more massive, massive respect for that. If you guys want, this is gonna be recorded and be put on YouTube as well, of course. So feel free to go to bed. Sleep is important, you know. Anyway, I'll be right back. I hope you guys enjoy. Sorry, guys. Enjoying it? Do you have any feedback? Feel free to throw it at me as well. If I give you too little or too much time, I'd be more than happy to hear it. Okay, so we got about a minute left, just FYI. And also this site will be up after this course as well, of course, so you can keep on trying if you like. I'm going to show you one, but there are multiple broken access control issues. So yes, if you found multiple, good job. And that is the signal that our time is up. Now let's have a look at cheese blocks, shall we? Because of course we have different users that we can log in with. And while some users might or might not be able to, so we can log out here, of course. The editor, for example, as you can see, we can not view users, for example. Now, that's already one that we can do, just view users. There we go. That's already an issue, broken access control. Now this one can create new posts. You can edit posts as well. No, you cannot delete posts. And we have a moderator as well. But all right, let's keep logging with editor for now. We can just move to posts, new post. We can just go to posts. And here we can see a posts identifier. We can also just delete. Let's delete post. I can find that if I log in with a different user, if I just log in with the moderator or the admin, either one, it doesn't really matter. I can go and I can, yeah, and know that that's not a safe password. I would really hope that somebody uses a different password than test. So I can go to edit, for example. Edit seems broken, need to work on that. I can delete posts. Those are also broken access control issues, but most of them would be view user, create new user. That's also possible as a low privileged user, of course. So I can log in, I can create user. For create user, I need to be logged in, but if I go and try view users, for example, as you can see, I don't even have to be logged in to view the different users, which is definitely a broken access control issue. So that's it for broken access control issues. And also I'm going to keep it at that for this specific lesson. We're going to continue in the next lesson and next sessions, because of course there are many more different issue types to cover. We've only covered 4 of them. I want to cover 13 in total. So this will be a series. This will be up on YouTube as well if you want to hack some more on those websites. I'm gonna fix some of the issues that we had in the course, because of course the CSRF issues need to be fixed as soon as possible. And of course also this lab needs to be functioning. Thank you very much everybody for your attention. It was great having you here. Such a pleasure. And thanks everybody for participating as well. I could be talking to a wall, but I don't think that would be nearly as interesting as what we did right now. If you have any feedback, if you have any questions, info@thexssrat.com. And you guys, if you want any of my full courses like the ethical hacking guide or something like that on YouTube, link will be in the description below as well, of course. Thank you so much for being here.